It's renewal season, and I was just in a partner webinar with Microsoft this morning, and this time of the year is that renewal season where almost 50% of all Microsoft 365 licenses come up for renewal in this quarter one. When we speak quarters, it's calendar quarters. Microsoft's fiscal year is more like a little bit similar to academia, so they're starting their Q3 this month, whereas from a calendar standpoint, we're starting our Q1. But yeah, it's renewal season. So there's a lot of, we say the acronym NCE, which stands for New Commerce Experience, which started a few years ago.
Hey everyone, welcome to the IT Collab podcast. My name is Brandon Barnes with my co-host,
Nathan Taylor. Good afternoon.
Nathan. Welcome. It's nice to see you again. It's been a nice new year. And today our special guest is Wade Walker. He is VP, Microsoft Alliance Source Pass, MCOE. You got a lot of titles, Wade.
Should I sell a couple?
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, all the cool things you do out there?
That sounds great. Well, thanks, Nathan and Brandon, for hosting. Super appreciate it. Wade Walker, again, VP of Microsoft Alliance here at SourcePass and our MCOE, our Microsoft Center of Excellence. And jumped into this role recently. We've had some changes after joining the SourcePass family about a year and a half ago. Nathan's about 5-6 months before us. And he and I have been friends for a long time.
Nice.
And in this new role, the focus is really on the Microsoft relationship for all of SourcePass, for the company, for our coworkers, for our customers, for all of our customers, prospects, and then for all of our partnerships as well. So really investing heavily in our Microsoft efforts for you, for everybody out there, for our coworkers, so that we can do all things Microsoft as most excellent as possible, and deliver the world-class white glove service when it comes to what can sometimes be a dizzying world of Microsoft licensing, incentives, programs, onboarding, and the list goes on.
It's a different language, Wade.
It is. I jokingly say I speak sports, so I'm trilingual. I speak English, sports, and Microsoft.
I like it.
I'm trilingual.
How do you feel about the Broncos making the playoffs?
Well, Nathan and I have been friends for a long time, so I'm in support of that. As a diehard San Francisco Niners fan, I'm in mourning right now. But I will. Nathan has been friendly enough to root for my Padres. So yes. So the very least I can do is root for the Broncos here.
Yeah. I can't stand your Lakers or your Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm okay with the Niners. I'll root for the Padres because, good Lord, the Rockies are terrible. So, we'll take what we can get.
Yeah. So,
leadership is great.
Yeah. So from 1,000 miles away here in San Diego, I'll be rooting on Bo Nix and your Broncos.
Awesome.
Fair enough. Well, as we discovered in our conversation with our friend over at Partner Masters 2 weeks ago, it's so much going on in the Microsoft space, right? It's just a nonstop barrage of changes and a ton of work to keep up with. And so, Wade, I'm thrilled to have you on here. As you said, we worked together a long time, but been friends for a long time, worked together for a bit of time. But I wanted to kind of start off the new year with just talking about all the big stuff happening in the Microsoft world, and kind of specifically on the licensing and account and pricing front. There's a lot of things changing. So,
right.
Not only is it the beginning of the calendar year, but this season tends to be a renewal season, right? A lot of customers are hitting renewals this time of year. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. That was like when it was forced, right? Like everyone had to change by February. It's renewal season.
Yep. It's renewal season. And I was just in a partner webinar with Microsoft this morning, and this time of the year is that renewal season where almost 50% of all Microsoft 365 licenses come up for renewal in this quarter one. When we speak quarters, it's calendar quarters. Microsoft's fiscal year is more like a little bit similar to academia. So they're starting their Q3 this month. Whereas from a calendar standpoint, we're starting our Q1. But yeah, it's renewal season. So there's a lot of, we say the acronym NCE, which stands for New Commerce Experience, which started a few years ago. And we're very active now with our customers and some prospects out there talking about, hey, here's your chance. If you have an annual subscription, you can make some changes to that you couldn't make during the 1 year term, such as reducing licenses or making some changes. There's upgrades available during the in term, but they're at the end of the term is when you have the full gamut of opportunities for your licensing. So this becomes and Brandon, like you mentioned, a kind of a forced thing a few years ago. Now we're very active with our clients, letting them know, hey, you're coming up for renewal. Let's schedule some time and talk, or, they want to do, digital email texting, that's fine as well. And then work through that process to make sure that the licenses are right-sized, they're getting the maximum value out of those licenses, and then making any adds, changes, or delete based on any of their business changes or projects they've got ongoing, or things they might be doing in a few months now that we need to set some licenses in advance for. So definitely the renewal season, which aligns with the NFL playoff season. So maybe we should have thought of that when we first started talking Broncos. But yeah, there we go.
Why did they not think of that?
Why did they? So the NC, they could have called it the NFL, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there we go. Yeah. So go ahead.
Maybe someday it'll be called Old Commerce Experience.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully someday it won't be called what some of us call it, which is negative customer experience. But we'll see.
Yeah.
There's a big change coming that kind of is going to drive a lot of consternation this year, which is with NCE came commitments, right? Microsoft, really, right. NCE was about Microsoft getting their shareholders, committed revenue. So unless you want to pay a pretty steep 20% premium, you had a minimum 12-month commit on all your Microsoft licensing. And you had flexibility to pay that up front or pay that annual or pay that monthly. And that's how it's been for the last 3-4 years. But a big change is coming on April 1st. And what's that change? Wait.
Yeah. So coming April 1st, in addition to these NCE licenses we're talking about in your subscription renewal, and if you're familiar with your subscription, it might be called, Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 or Business Premium or something like that. And it is important to note that each subscription has its own subscription term. We tend to make a lot coterminous for ease of management, but the conversation can get a little complex if we're dealing with 5, 10, 15 subscriptions for a customer. And then when we get into Q2 here, April 1st, and this is not an April 1st joke, not an April Fool's joke, there's a price increase happening. So there's an increase happening come April 1st for these NCE, these Microsoft 365 licenses. And there's also an option for Copilot to go monthly with also a 5% increase. So part of the conversation we'll be having with everybody is not only just the renewing of their subscription licenses, be it annual or monthly, as Nathan has mentioned, but also getting these changes in and maybe committing for a year sometime during this quarter to then push back that 5% increase until the term ends a year later. The way these price increases are deployed by Microsoft, the same thing happened 3 years ago when NCE was rolled out for Microsoft 365 subscriptions. If a customer commits for a year, instead of month to month, do a yearly commitment. They can do monthly payments or the upfront annual payment. But if they commit for a year, then during that 12-month term, that year term, price increases don't apply to those subscriptions. So it's a good way to push a 5% price increase out 12 months by signing up for a 12-month subscription and then planning for next year for that price to go up. Month-to-month subscriptions have that same thing. You can't increase the price during a monthly subscription, but your month-to-month ends in 30 days. So if you do sign a month-to-month subscription, you can push that 5% increase just back 1 month. So that's a big topic to add into this conversation is, hey, we need to act, get your licenses right-sized, and then have the conversation about the annual 12-month subscription term to then alleviate any price increasing until, so weird to say, until 2026. Now that we're in 2025.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, that's that 5% increase for a lot of people, because most of our customers, and I think this is true across most of the SMB space, small, medium business. So let's say under probably 2,500 people, because 2,500 user companies, most of them are monthly, right? They're not on that paid annual. You see that in larger business because they budget differently and they want to do different payment programs, but it's going to impact a lot of people. And so that opportunity to get that 5% discount, push, that 5% increase of delay that a year is a big deal. And then there's ways I think we can work with co-terming. If you do have sometimes people have multiple renewal dates, right? They renewed the majority of their licenses in CE window. And so they're going to be good for a year, but then they added, Teams Premium halfway through the year. It's got a different renewal date. And so we can work on trying to sync up those renewal dates, but it's worth being aware of. So,
and one trick we've done in the past is if a customer thinks they're going to sign in for a license and they want to avoid that 5%, just sign up for that 1-year subscription with a quantity of 1. And then that and this gets very confusing, it's very technical. A subscription is called a subscription. The quantity is called a license. So get the subscription for a year with a quantity of 1 license. You can add 10, 15, 100 people afterwards in that subscription, and that subscription holds on to that price for 12 months. So one thing we'll plant a seed for our clients is, hey, if you're doing a big project in June, in May, whatever it is, let's just buy one of these licenses. I'm sorry, one subscription right now with 1 license. And then we can add additional licenses during the 12-month term and not incur the 5% increase again until 2026. So to Nathan's point, there's some tricks in the trade of working on co-term scenarios, working on getting a subscription with a quantity of 1, and a few other tricks that we've learned over the years to help really, manage the costs for our clients here.
Yeah.
It's going to add up.
It is. 5% is a lot. Some of these companies are spending 40, 50 grand a month. 5% is a big change.
That's interesting. I think the methodology I think I've used is if there is a flex company that flexes up and down and staff, we always have like, hey, you're going to have 50 people. Let's put that on the annual contract or, something along those lines. And then just have those couple licenses you're going to flex on up and down to be a monthly.
Yeah.
But it's trying to engineer a scenario. I feel like it can be so complicated, but that's where we try and help, and customers for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Do like an 80-20, right? 80% in an annual term, 20, or we've got some construction customers that do a lot of interns and other stuff in the summertime. So we'll pop up on that monthly during the 2 or 3 month term. We've got one customer that responds to natural disasters like hurricanes, and they'll go from 200 workers to 1,200 workers starting in the May-June timeframe through the end of the year. Yeah, so we've got to do a lot of subscription and license flexibility with them to accommodate their adding and changing of license needs depending on natural disasters. It's mostly hurricanes, but natural disasters and where they send their team out there to go set up shop and help everybody. But it's there's a science to this, and there's also an art to it. So it's something we pay very close attention to.
Yeah. The other wrinkle for those enterprise customers that Microsoft dropped last year, but might catch up to people this year, is Microsoft unbundled the Teams license from E3 and E5. So you could still buy Business Premium, the small business SKUs with Teams bundled. Price didn't change. They didn't mess with that. If you have an existing E3 or E5 subscription, it still includes Teams. But any new E3 or E5 subscriptions, Microsoft 365 E3 or 5, you have to bolt Teams as an add-on. And this is to kind of get ahead of European antitrust, scrutiny. I don't think it works because they're still getting hit with that. But there's some wrinkles this year that we've heard for people who are direct. If you're buying through a reseller, most of your resellers have an auto renew flag that's on those annual commitments. So those licenses are just going to continue to renew unless you go actively turn it off. But quietly, Microsoft disabled the auto renew on all the direct partners for this year on their E3s and E5s. That's what I've heard through the grapevine. And so it's important to pay attention if you're a provider, because what'll happen is if that happens, it's not the end of the world. Microsoft will let you use the service for a couple of days without licenses. Your customer's not going to go dark. But when you go to reprovision those licenses, they're going to come with the 5% increase and the Teams license, which is another 5 to 10% increase. And so you can get yourself in a little bit of a sticky mess if you're not paying attention on those Microsoft 365 E3s and E5s, just based on how Microsoft's handling the licensing on the back end.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one, that European Economic Union, EEU, that came out a couple years ago. It started there, antitrust, like Nathan mentioned, hitting us here in the States this year. And again, in the verbiage of a subscription, as long as we keep that subscription alive and current, we don't have to worry about the new subscription that has the unbundled Teams with it. So that's another one in this renewal season to look for. And possibly, if you're thinking of doing a Microsoft 365 E3 or E5, get it now at a quantity of one with Teams on it, so that you can have it without Teams being unbundled from it.
Is it pretty expensive? What's the difference on the unbundled? I haven't dealt with that yet.
5 to 10% more expensive, somewhere in there.
Really?
Yeah.
So while they unbundle it, make it more expensive.
Yeah.
You got to pay for $80 billion of AI data centers in 2025, one way or another.
80 billion. Isn't that amazing? Just 1 year.
They're just building.
What Nathan's mentioning is they announced $80 billion in data center expansion worldwide. Microsoft did, just in the calendar year that's 2025. Nathan, can I borrow $80 billion? Or Brandon, do you have $80 billion in your pocket?
Yes, sir.
You got it.
It's not real, but it's there.
Yeah, man.
Have you noticed how you like to use Copilot? Like, I love having the app on my phone, or like having it on my computer and just having the app there. But it's changed like 3 or 4 times now. Like,
yes, it has.
I'm like, okay, so it's Copilot. Then it went to Microsoft 365, but they're going to rename Microsoft 365 Copilot. I'm like, come on, man.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
I still go on my phone and I scroll up or down to get the search thing, and I type Copilot, right? And it's like, oh no, it's the Microsoft 365 app, as of, I don't know, a couple weeks ago?
Although the Outlook app now has a Copilot button on mobile. I don't know if you noticed that. That's kind of cool. So
that's kind of cool. I live and die by Copilot. We were early adopters. Nathan's team, my team were early adopters, and we've been using it for a while. And I have completely changed my world in the way I search, think.
That's right.
Analyze. I get it at $30 a month or $360 a year. I'm just like, it's so worth it because it saves me hours every week.
Yeah. So Wade, we did a challenge. Okay. And I challenged Nathan to stop Googling stuff and start using like AI.
Good for you.
And it was like, hey, I don't want you to search. Because even the other day I found myself doing it. I'm like, why am I Googling this? This is dumb. I was like, I could go to Copilot, or I go on my Google device. I have Gemini, right?
Yeah.
What is this? And it finds like 3 different areas from whatever I needed. I'm like, this is so much better. It like searches my search. But I don't know. Yeah. Nathan, how's that going, by the way? Is that where it's still?
What it's done is I just hear you shaking your finger at me every time I Google. I go, oh yeah, Brandon told me to stop this.
No. It was a challenge.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Old habits are hard to die.
Aren't they?
And
it's so hard.
I remember giving a talk, and I was at a large company when we led the internet revolution in IT back in the late 90s. So I'm dating myself. And I did a presentation for management on how to use a search engine and the difference between Yahoo and Lycos, Google, and search all this other stuff. And so we have to go away from old school keyword searching to much more conversational. And it's funny, like even in our house, my wife and I were talking about it. She's not the most tech loving person in the world, but she was like, Wade, why would people do this? I'm like, well, it's conversational, and you're going to start talking to your phone and doing search by voice, and you're going to have websites are going to be conversational. She's like, no, that's not happening. And then she looks on over to her Amazon Echo device and tells it to stop playing music or turn it up. And I'm like, you're already doing it. You're already using voice. You're already doing conversational thing with your Amazon Echo and your music playlist. And she's like, oh my God, I am. I'm like, it's here.
You. Well, I did. So guys, I did sign up for that. What's it called? The Gemini so it's the smart one for Google. And so, you saw the commercials where you're supposed to talk back and forth.
Yeah.
And it actually had the conversation. Have you seen that?
I have. Yes.
Seen the commercials.
It was weird. I stopped after like a minute, like, this is awkward. But I'll let you know how it goes.
It's hilarious.
It's going to become very awkward. Yes.
Yes, it is.
And then if you're on a call like this, like how do you know I'm not an AI image that's talking to you at some point, right?
Yeah, it's coming.
We're not there yet, but
we were talking about how we need to have a family safe word so that when you get an AI phone call, hey, this is Dad and I've been kidnapped. Give me him, $1,000. Well, what's the family safe word? That kind of thing. So,
so really, true.
Yeah, it's a thing. Like it's happening. I think in third world countries especially, but like the three of us, you and me, Brandon, all these podcast episodes, you could absolutely spoof my voice and call my family and try to
100%
trick them with all the data that's out there. It's easy. So
my mom got a call the other day that she swore was my daughter's voice, her granddaughter's voice. And I'm coaching my mom, hey, whenever that happens, she negotiated with them and then hung up. I'm like, don't even negotiate. You just hang up. She started asking questions and they couldn't answer them. But I'm like, stop, just hang up.
Yeah.
And you call me, you call my wife, you call your granddaughter. But it's hard. The old emails from a Nigerian prince for $25 million. The new ones are just so amazing looking, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I really did win $25 million.
Just have to send them 2,000.
Right. Well, so that Copilot going to monthly is a big win. That was a big barrier to entry for a lot of customers. The other big thing that quietly launched in June, July was the ability to move CSP subscriptions between providers midterm. So, there was a real challenge where we had to get customers to agree to a 12-month commitment with NCE, but maybe their MSP agreement was on a different rhythm. It wasn't renewing in February. So you're halfway through their Microsoft commitment when their service agreement moves. And now you got to bill them when they're no longer your customer for their Microsoft until that agreement ends. We're now able to move those between partners. And I think that's going to really, it'll reduce some of that, stickiness, but we've always felt like that stickiness was almost more trouble than it was worth, because I don't want you stuck buying something from me if you're not happy with me, outside of a reasonable contract length. So that's a big change from this year.
A big win for the industry. And ironically, it's a very similar process we had for moving Azure CSP plan subscriptions. That's been around for a while. It just took Microsoft a few years to deploy it.
So say that one again, the Azure subscriptions?
NCE, it started in 2019, 2020, and it was first, a lot of the things were actually in the Azure world, and CSP server subscriptions and things like that. So a quote unquote Azure CSP, an Azure plan subscription, that's the terminology that most customers have with their CSP provider like us. They can move away from a client. Now, Azure doesn't have terms like Microsoft 365 does, so it's a different licensing model, but a customer could move between partners with a form basically that you fill out. Very similar form. Sorry.
So because I ran, and I'm just asking questions, Wade, because I ran into this, right? And like moving someone from one subscription to another used to be heartache, right? Even dealing with the top level Aero Microsoft people, right? And you had some stuff that you couldn't just move from one subscription to another. And so you're always stuck on like the public IP, public IPs and other stuff that you just couldn't move. Right. So are you saying you can move those subscriptions over?
Yeah. So like the scenario I think you first described is what we call a migration, right? If we had to migrate from AWS to Azure, or from another Azure environment, from another provider, you would have to quote unquote migrate, which is like moving a house, right? Moving everything from the house you're in to another house. And there's a significant level of effort. Whereas changing it's just like when you're in a house and you change from your cable TV provider to streaming, right? You just make a change and you switch. And this switch we're starting with Microsoft 365, which happened June, July last year. We're seeing more traction on that. And it's the same model that's been in place since 2020 or 2021 with the particular Azure subscriptions that are called Azure Plan CSP, which is the very common one in the CSP world, where you can just move that whole subscription from being managed by one partner to another.
Yeah, that can be pretty hard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Migrations are a lot of work, especially if you've got dozens of virtual machines, you've got some Kubernetes activity
and all
website
weird
storage.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And then like the unmovable stuff that you can't move, so you have to like delete it and recreate it. It's a nightmare.
That was the public IPs and other things that they had.
Right,
like,
public IPs.
Oh my goodness! Like there's certain things you just can't move.
Yeah, and if you've got reserved instances and reserved storage, so there's a lot to be done with that. But yeah, you can move Azure, and now within the past 6 months, we can do the same move process from one CSP Microsoft partner to another.
It's all form-based.
It's almost the same exact Microsoft Word form. It's the partner, you do it, you start it off with your partners, and the partners do the work of they see the subscription ID and all the subscriptions and the paperwork. Yeah, it's basically a paperwork thing. Right. So you don't have to pay for a moving van to move everything. Instead, it's a back-end paperwork. And then, and there's zero, if it's done correctly, and that's the value of having a good partner, there's zero service interruption. So John Doe and Jane Doe will still be on their team's phone calls, sending emails, using Loop, using OneNote, and they won't notice that anything has happened if it's done correctly.
So Wade, this is going to be the funny piece, right? We've all had to deal with another handoff from an MSP that was not very nice. Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. How that's going to go. Like, is it the owner of the company? Like, I'm interested to see some stories that come out of that one.
Yeah. We've all been there, and I've got some friends down here where they didn't realize this, but they signed up with an MSP that doesn't give them global admin permissions, doesn't give them admin to their stuff. Yep, Brandon's shaking his head. And then when they want to migrate, it's like, nope, you can't. And by the way, the terms of the contract say you can't. So the terms of the contract with the MSP, not with Microsoft. So there's that in play too, is you've got the losing partner has to play nice in the sandbox. And that doesn't always happen.
And we ran into one where recently, actually, that was very interesting in that realm, where you don't have any global admin or any access whatsoever to help install your tools to be ready to support. But we'll give you all that in the data cutover. Okay.
Yep.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I've always felt like
give me the key.
I've always felt like if you do a good job of letting customers go, they're more likely to come back. You're going to build goodwill. Yeah. Being a stinker when customers leave is just never a good way to be.
No.
So, what problem are you trying to solve there, right?
Yeah.
Why would you want an unhappy customer?
Yeah. So Wade, then the other big thing that's been announced that is going to impact some larger businesses, talk about the big changes of the EA world.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Good old EA.
So, seems to be with the renewal season with the NCE. 3 years ago when NCE started, EA's around that time, a little before that, jumped from about 500 users to 2,400, 2,399 if you're being cutting hairs. Now it's up to about 6,000. This is in the commercial space. So this doesn't necessarily apply to governments, things like that. But if you had that enterprise agreement, EAs are 3 years long. It's a 3-year term. If you are up to renew your EA starting in 2025 here, and most EAs, not all, but most EAs end around the end of June because most people negotiated with Microsoft to get the biggest discount at the end of Microsoft's fiscal year.
Yeah.
If they want to renew and there are less than 6,000 users, they are being told no. And we have multiple customers and prospects we're talking with that have already been told no by Microsoft. Like, hey, you are not going to be able to renew your 3-year term. And because of that, their option now is this NCE CSP model that we've been talking about, where they get the month-to-month or the annual term subscription, and then they'll have to move their licenses. Move's the wrong word. They end their, because EA licenses are a different product, a different SKU ID. So they end their EA licenses and start their NCE CSP licenses. And it's kind of an orchestrated thing we do where we add the licenses and we manage it at the date. And again, we do it so it's seamless to the John Doe and Jane Doe users. It's a lot of orchestrated work, but the big picture is if you're at that 3-year term and so over the next 3 years, as EAs expire over the next 3 years, companies in the commercial sector that are less than 6,000 people that don't get an exception are going to be moving into the CSP NCE world that we
live in now.
We all live and die in that world. But for larger SMB, SMC markets or the enterprise, which Microsoft's now calling majors, those smaller majors, smaller enterprise customers are being told you have to move.
Yeah, and I think for most of those customers, I think it's going to be a win. I mean, with an EA, oftentimes you could negotiate a percentage discount from Microsoft, but those of us who play in that larger license space are often willing to negotiate the same levels of discounts for volume. But you get very little flexibility on that EA. It's a 3-year commitment, and with, as you talked about earlier, Brandon, you get on CSP and you go, well, I know that my low water mark for my business is 50 users, or that's okay, it's an EA. So my low water mark is, 3,600 users. I'm not going below that in the next year, but I may go as high as 4,000 users. I got a 400 user movement. You can put those on monthly and get the flexibility that EA never had any options for. And I think it's going to be a win for most of those customers to move into a CSP space. So
I agree.
Yeah,
especially in the mortgage company. I remember a couple of the mortgage companies we had, they're stuck in these EAs and they're gone.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. Yeah. We had a couple mortgage companies and lenders. And ironically, for our customers that have EAs, they go to the minimum amount of EA quantity they could do. And then anything above the minimum amount, they put into CSP. So they have the flexibility. But that mortgage sector over the pandemic just, the financial sector just
got rocked.
You just feel so bad for this.
It's like they bubbled and then all of a sudden, gone.
Yeah.
Just disappeared.
Gone.
Like, whoa. Yeah.
And
they're some of our biggest clients, though. Yeah.
They're accustomed to that, right? Because their world lives and dies on interest rates, right? So they're very accustomed to it. But I don't think anybody thought it was going to be what happened the past couple of years with interest rates.
Yeah. For sure.
So sad.
Yeah. Well, let's chat about a couple other things that come in. So price increases for server and Cal, Wade, for 2025?
Yeah. So for the 2025, so this is called Windows Server 25. So we're all, Windows Server, and as I think most people know, Windows Server is released every 3 years. So there was 2016, 19, 22. And now this year, Windows Server 2025, the standard and data center versions, including their client access licenses, are going up by 10%. And then if you've got remote desktop service CALs, they're going up 20%.
Ooh.
And then Essentials, which we don't have a lot of customers with Essentials, but it's a really good product for a certain space. That one's going up 15%. So, for people that are on 2022 and they don't have a software assurance or they didn't buy a CSP server subscription, and we can get into details of that later. But if they're buying a new 2025 that's not a subscription, not a software assurance, it's going to be a bump up from what it's been by a good 10%. So good to get that message out and let people know, hey, if you're looking for Windows Server,
just go buy some in Azure.
That's what Microsoft wants, right?
Just call it out.
Yeah, but even then,
don't worry about the license. Just go set it up in Azure. You're fine.
But once you get into Azure, you go, this is expensive. And they'll go, well, you should buy that more expensive license, and you can use hybrid use benefit and get it cheaper. So we're back full circle.
Oh, man.
And even though it's tied to 2025, that's basically any new servers you want to add. You maybe still standardized on 2022 or 2019, you're still probably, if you have to add a server, you're adding licenses, and they're only really selling 2025 going forward, and you just have those backward compatible license keys. So, you know, it's just part of the rhythm of price increases as things come. But
so true.
Yeah,
so true.
Then the final big thing for this year, we've talked about this a couple times, is Windows 10 end of life. That's going to drive a lot of change in our space this year.
Yeah, and ironically, it's on my wife's birthday, October 14th. So I better not forget my wife's birthday, and I shouldn't talk about the end of life much more than her birthday. But for the purpose of this conversation, yeah, Windows 10 end of life is in October. So for those that are on Windows 10, it's now the Windows 11 discussion, and looking at some of the, and some of the newer computers and laptops that are coming out are amazing. Nathan and I got some Copilot laptops or Copilot Pros. I mean, they've got like 10 cores on them, and they come with Windows 11, obviously, and they've got Copilot built in, and they've got GPUs for processing, NPU, which I had to look up, a neural processing unit for doing the AI activity. So I think it's also going to, this end of life is going to really force some people to really look at the hardware they've got. And if they've got a couple-year-old laptop or desktop that's just got a 2-core, 4-core CPU, now for a very reasonable price, they can get a 10-core CPU with GPU and NPU on it. And these things are fast, and they don't eat the battery
lasts
much.
20 hours on those ARM ones.
Yeah.
The new ARM-based Copilot Plus PCs have 20-hour battery life. It's amazing.
I'm gonna look that up. And it's funny, we know for years we hear about the Intel PC, and this Qualcomm Snapdragon CPU. I never thought I'd be running a laptop that is a Qualcomm Snapdragon processor.
Yeah,
just wild. So I think they're going to go hand in hand. A lot of upgrades are going to force hardware. The Windows 10 end of life is going to force some hardware upgrades.
Yep.
When that doesn't happen, then it's really, hey, we got to get you to Windows 11.
Because the Windows 10 upgrade, to Windows 11, if your hardware doesn't have the right TPM chip or isn't on the compatibility list, you just can't upgrade to 11, and you're going to have to buy new hardware. And I think that's going to impact 25-30% of corporate fleets. There's an option for extended support, so you can get an extended support license. They have a personal license that you can buy, and they have a business license you can buy, and so you'll continue to get those security updates. But I think the business license is like $60 for the first year, $120 for the second year, $180 for the third year. So they're really trying to get people to upgrade, and I think that's going to drive a lot of change in the market and a lot of hardware sales.
Yeah.
So
seriously,
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, always lots of interesting stuff to talk about on the Microsoft stuff. They keep us busy.
Nothing stays the same.
No.
For all the acronym changes that Microsoft makes every year, I'm surprised the NCE acronym hasn't changed.
Right? Now you've spoken it out into the ether. It's going to happen.
I did.
Yes.
I did. It's OCE. Old Commerce Experience.
Commerce Experience.
That's what it'll be.
We're going to do OGCE, right?
Right.
I like that,
cool
Brent.
like that.
Like that. You're on the marketing team, aren't you?
Yep. Don't tell anyone.
He still wants to claim he's a nerd, but he's a marketing guy now.
Anyway, Wade, it's been nice. I know we're coming into the time. Appreciate having you guys on. And obviously we're probably going to talk Microsoft again. Just to be real.
Sounds good. No, I appreciate you hosting me here. And Nathan, same thing. It's an honor to be on your IT Collab podcast. So appreciate it. And hopefully it's the first of many to come.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next time.
All right.
See you next
Take care,
time,
everybody. Bye.
See you, everyone.